Hi, my name's Cordy, and I don't speak French, so I'll let the toupee do the talking, obviously. So, you just heard me sort of hacking my way through How High the Moon, which is quite an old jazz standard. I think the first version I heard of it was Ella Fitzgerald. You might also want to check out Les Paul's early version of it, as that's kind of cool to hear the guy who came up with the Gibson Les Paul doing some stuff. And I think there's like a really early example of kind of looping in that example. I think it's Mary, Ford and Les Paul, worth checking out anyway. But so this is a tune that I worked on for quite a long time and still have to. The other week and I went over to a friend's birthday party where there was three of us, and we sort of just played jazz in his garden, and I hadn't practiced this tune and it just came out of nowhere and didn't come off very well. So I think definitely worth practicing it, and I'll just show you a kind of simple chord melody that I would play for it, or kind of what's the basis of what I did, because what I just did was improvised but around some sort of ideas which I would kind of do each time maybe. So like a framework of a chord melody, and we could talk about the chords and stuff and talk about how I'm improvising over it. Hopefully this is interesting to a few people. I know like the jazz stuff doesn't get a huge audience, particularly when I'm talking about it, but if you could like and subscribe, that would help me know that this is worth continuing to do. There's also a buy me a coffee link, and this is running empty, but if you find something useful in here, then do let me know. There's a buy me a coffee link if you can afford to and you really found something useful in this video. And the tabs for the chord melody and the backing track that you heard me playing along with, which I just put together now, will go up on my Patreon, where you can find tabs for all this sort of stuff and a few other tunes, and I'm going to continue to update it. So, as always, I would start learning the melody. That's the basic gist of the tune. So you've got that melody, and you might have noticed that there's this thing happening. So you start off with this G, we're in G, it's your first chord, and that G major turns into a G minor to a C to an F. So if you kind of think about what's happened there, our chord 1 has turned into chord 2 of F major, then to chord 5 of F major, to chord 1 of F major. And then the same thing happens again. We end up with the F major turning into an F minor, so we get a 2-5-1 in E flat major. Now I'm going to talk about strategies over that in a sec, but let's just talk about what happens after this. So this is the bit that catches me out quite a lot, and we end up getting a 2-5-1 in G again, so we're back to G, but we end up playing a G minor. So that is what used to catch me out quite a bit. So, you know, focus in on that part if you're having trouble with it like me. So you end up with this kind of thing. And then you repeat that again, but end up on like the G major. And then a turnaround. And then second time around, we're doing the same thing again. So. F minor, B7, B flat 7, 2, 5, 1 in G, and then another turnaround. So relatively simple, sort of, but also sort of not. So initially what I would say is learn that melody, and for this one I would think that sitting with a lead sheet wouldn't hurt you for a while, so you can sort of look at what's going on and visualize it, but sort of simply I think of it as F, you're in F now, you're in E flat now, and then I kind of just think of this whole chunk as G minor, then G major still, G major, then G minor, F major, F minor takes us to E flat, and then we're going to stay in G major all the way. That's kind of how I'm thinking about like the overall kind of view of each of those parts, as in, you know, the harmonic overview, and then we can just talk about this kind of let's talk about how we get through that kind of descending thing. So we got a G major turning to a G minor into an F major and then an F minor. So if we just look at that, you could do things like G major, G minor, F major. So I'd suggest chordally you want to keep some kind of common tones between those things, and get it into your head how those kind of changes morph into one another. So maybe just plan out some stuff like and then do things like this. So kind of keeping some common tones between phrases and kind of morphing the line and the melody to fit with where it's going to be. So that's kind of at a small level what I'm trying to do. You could take something like the honeysuckle rose kind of motif. So we got it in G. And I think I even did this for a little bit. So you could play that across the 3 keys and that would help. So ideas like that, try and carry an idea through those changes a little bit. Maybe keeping common tones, so you know, for instance, the G we could keep a D, the G minor we could keep a D. You could keep like a D going through most of it. So that's kind of one of the strategies that I'd use for soloing over it, but the main thing that I'd be looking to do target the thirds and sevenths, I think, and then that third will have to turn into a minor third for the G minor, and then that would be the seventh of the C major, and then we resolve down to the third of the F major, so if you were focusing on this third and doing something simple, you might end up with something like which I think can work and carry you through that and help you to hear those changes. So that's roughly what I'm thinking when I'm playing through this tune, and what I've done essentially is play it through loads and loads and loads and loads of times, so that the changes feel kind of natural-ish, and so I'm not having to think about them too hard. I'm kind of just listening my way through the tune. This is definitely one of those tunes which you probably can't just bluff your way through. I think you almost certainly will need to have quite a good grasp of what the changes are to solo through it competently. I know in some jazz tunes you can kind of fake your way through it a little bit, but this is one of those ones where the changes are coming sort of pretty fast, and it's not really that easy to just go through it with a pentatonic or whatever. So yeah, as I say, the chord melody a simplified kind of skeleton for that I'll put up on my Patreon if you want it. If you could like and subscribe, that would really help. But yeah, that's how I'm thinking of How High the Moon, and just a few tips that I kind of had. Yeah, sort of three main keys: your G major, your F major, and your E flat major. Oh, and then a G minor as well, so four main keys. The tricky part is just kind of following those changes through, which is going to probably take a lot of time just playing with a backing track and then also trying to play without a backing track and that sort of thing. Hopefully that's vaguely useful. That's how I think of How High the Moon, and that's kind of how I've learned to sort of fake my way through it. There's a like and subscribe option. You could like this video if it was vaguely useful, and subscribe if you want more of this sort of thing, and also there's loads of other stuff on the channel which you might like. There's a lessons and licks playlist which I think should help you find more of this kind of thing. But yeah, head over to the Patreon if you want the chord melody and the backing track, and I'll catch you for another video soon. Cheers.